Hi everyone. In this video we're going to talk about the elements of principles of design and specifically how they can be applied to kitchen and bath design. And let's start out with the elements of design. These elements are your designer's tools, put them in your toolbox. All right. They're concrete, they're quantifiable. And the elements of design are line, shape, pattern, space, form, texture, color, and light. We're going to talk about each one of them. The line is the simplest element of design. In essence, it's a connection between 2 points. And there's a couple of different ways that it can be used in your designs. It can be horizontal, vertical, curved, or diagonal. So using the horizontal line in your design is the most stable, right? It's visually widens your design and it evokes calm, rest, relaxation, maybe even informality, right? And there's an example of it in your screen here. Using a vertical line will often carry your eye upwards. It'll add visual height to your design, even if you don't have actual height, add some visual height. It can come off as forceful, formal, austere, or even rigid. A curved line comes in just about infinite varieties, and it can be used to soften a space. Diagonal lines feel dramatic, and they can imply action. So when you're using the element of line in your designs, one type, horizontal, vertical, etc., should dominate. The other types should be in there, but with kind of a subordinate role, right? Too much of any one type could be boring though. But if you use too many different types, all right, you can get some visual confusion and your room actually will seem to shrink. Moving on to the element of design of shape. Shape is defined as a 2D configuration of any lines linked together. And it comes in square, rectangle, diagonal, triangle, curves, okay, many different kinds. So here in your slide is a picture of a bathroom design with some square shapes. Square shapes tend to be very stable. There's not much movement. It's got a lot of sameness and regularity. Rectangular shapes are also regular. They're easy to relate to, and they're a little bit more interesting than square, right? Because you've got some varying sizes. Diagonal shapes, much like diagonal lines, imply movement, activity. Okay, so they feel a little bit unstable, and they might draw your eye along a path. Of all the angled shapes, though, the triangle would be the most stable. It generally has a stable base. Curved shapes are going to visually expand a space as well as soften, like we talked about with the lines. And your eye will naturally follow that curve. So like the diagonal shapes, they create movement. They create the feeling of activity and movement. Let's talk about patterns next. In kitchen and bath design or in interior design, pattern is defined as the arrangement of motifs or designs or shapes in a repetitive or a varied order. When you're working with pattern in interior design, and specifically in kitchen and bath design, there are some rules of thumb for combining patterns, and one of them is called color continuity. So you'd like the colors in your patterns to match up or be continuous. And that goes along with style or theme consistency. You would like some sort of connection between the different patterns that you're using. It's actually a good idea to mix different types together, right? Adds a little bit of vibrancy and motion to your design. And you can vary the size and scale of those patterns. So maybe a small pattern combined with a larger pattern. Okay. You can also vary the intensity of the patterns. One of them might be very dark, very intense, very important, and one of them might be a little bit more relaxed or of subordinate importance. That goes along with the same idea of including both intricate and subtle or simpler patterns. You can include different amounts of pattern in your design, and always remember that patterns should be contrasted or paired with areas of solids, textures, and neutrals. Let's talk about the element of space next. Space, the final frontier. Oh no, wait, that's not what we're talking about. Okay, in this case, the element of space is the three-dimensional area creating the room. And so it's defined by and created by the walls around your room, which enclose the floor and the ceiling of your kitchen or bath. And so space is therefore the envelope or the enclosure that a designer works within. Your room, your kitchen, or your bath can be closed or it can feel more open. Most residential kitchens and bathrooms tend to be some variation of a rectangle, right? We usually use rectilinear plans, and it's unusual if you have a curved wall or an angled wall. So we talk about space because it's critical to understand the relationship between the individual form of an object and the object in your space and the overall space in which it occupies. So let's talk about form in this case, and leading right into the form of a specific object or a specific assemblage of objects. The form of an object is determined by its structure, its size, its apparent or visual weight, and its ornamentation. It's not just the physical shape of that object, although that's a major part of it, but it's the overall structure of that shape and the relationship of it with the things that are adjacent. So here in the picture, we have an example of a pyramid form. Okay, so we've got a center cabinet raised above those tile backsplashes. No, it's not a diagonal pyramid. It is a stepped pyramid, um, and it's part of that form of that object. There's a couple of ways to emphasize specific forms in your room or your design. And one of them is the pyramid form, and we just saw that in the last slide, where the tallest vertical element is in the center, adjacent elements are smaller in descending order. There is an H form where taller elements are at each end of a lower form. Okay, it's symmetrically balanced, and it's usually seen in elevation at H shape on a wall, right? And here on your screen is an example of that. The third way to emphasize any specific form is called a step ladder, and it's got tallest forms on one end of the wall, and the other elements are progressively smaller. So we're looking at the area over the sink right here, and we've got a step ladder or staircase form on each side. Actually, they've used it in a symmetrical way. All right, everybody, we introduced the elements of design and touched on a couple of them. In the next video, we'll continue with this discussion and hit the last few elements of design.